This story has a happy ending. A mother walked into the hospital crying, expecting to lose her baby. She left holding a miracle that no one saw coming. Real story, told by a gynecologist. Not medical advice. You are safe here. Let's begin. I still remember the way Angela walked through those hospital doors. Not like most mothers at 35 weeks. Not waddling with that tired but happy anticipation. Not clutching a hospital bag filled with tiny onesies and a phone charger. No. Angela walked in like someone carrying something too heavy. Like her heart had already started grieving before anyone had given her bad news. She was crying before she even reached the front desk. Her husband, Marcus, stayed close behind her, one hand on her lower back, the other gripping a small bag. But I noticed something immediately. He wasn't reassuring her. He wasn't saying the usual things husbands say like, "It's going to be fine," or "You're worrying for nothing." He was quiet. His face was pale, and his eyes kept drifting to her belly, as if he was afraid to look away. When the nurse called me down, I found Angela in the examination room, still in her coat, still wearing the same shoes she had driven to the hospital in. She hadn't even changed into a gown yet. She was just sitting there, tears falling onto her hands folded in her lap, rocking slightly. I sat down across from her and waited. Sometimes that's the most important thing a doctor can do. Not talk. Not examine. Just be present long enough for a mother to find her voice. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were swollen and red. And the first words she said weren't about symptoms or pain or contractions. She said, "I don't think I'm going to get to keep him." That was the moment I understood. Angela had spent this entire pregnancy preparing for loss. Every kick she felt, she worried would be the last. Every ultrasound, she braced for silence. Every week that passed, she told herself not to get too attached. And now at 35 weeks, something had changed. Something had made her believe the moment she had been dreading had finally arrived. She hadn't come to the hospital for confirmation that everything was fine. She had come because she already believed her baby boy was gone. I asked her gently what had happened that morning, and the words just poured out of her, like she had been holding them inside for months and finally found someone willing to listen. She told me she had woken up at 4 in the morning and realized she couldn't remember feeling the baby move since the night before. At first, she tried to stay calm. She drank cold water. She lay on her left side. She pressed her hands against her belly and waited. 15 minutes. 30. An hour. Nothing. Marcus woke up to find her sitting in the dark, both hands pressed against her stomach, whispering something he couldn't understand. He asked her what was wrong, and she couldn't even answer. She just shook her head and kept waiting for a kick that wouldn't come. By 6 in the morning, she had started crying. Not the quiet, controlled tears of someone managing their fear. The kind of crying that comes from a place so deep inside, you don't even recognize your own voice anymore. She told me she had called the hospital before they even left the house. The nurse on the phone told her to come in right away. But Angela admitted to me that she almost didn't come at all. Why not? I asked her. She looked down at her hands and said something I will never forget. Because I thought if I came in and they told me he was gone, I would have to keep living after that. And I didn't know if I could. Marcus reached for her hand then. And I watched his face crumble for just a second before he pulled himself back together. He was terrified too, but he was trying so hard to be the strong one. That's the thing about pregnancy loss fears. They don't just haunt the mother. They haunt everyone who loves her. I asked Angela when she had last felt the baby move. She closed her eyes like she was trying to remember something precious. "Last night," she whispered. "Around 10. I think. Or maybe it was 9. I don't know anymore. I can't trust my memory anymore." That was when I knew we needed to start monitoring immediately. Not because I had answers yet, but because the fear in that room had become its own kind of emergency. We moved Angela to a monitoring room as quickly as possible. She lay on the hospital bed while a nurse strapped 2 round sensors to her belly, one to track the baby's heart rate, the other to measure any contractions. The room filled with the quiet hum of machines, and the soft whoosh of blood flow through the umbilical cord. Angela stared at the monitor screen like her life depended on every single line that appeared. At first, there was nothing reassuring to see. The baby's heart rate was there, faint but present. That alone should have brought some relief. But the pattern was wrong. The variability was low, meaning his heart wasn't responding the way it should to his own movements. And when he did move, the heart rate didn't accelerate like we needed to see. I watched the numbers for 10 minutes before I spoke. Then I watched for another 5. Marcus stood beside the bed, one hand resting on Angela's shoulder, his eyes fixed on the same screen. Neither of them asked me questions yet. I think they were both afraid of the answers. Finally, I turned to Angela and told her the truth. The way I always tell mothers the truth, even when it's hard to hear. The baby boy was showing signs of possible oxygen compromise. It wasn't an emergency yet, but it could become one very quickly. I explained that we needed to admit her immediately, start continuous monitoring, and prepare for the possibility that we might need to deliver early. I watched her face change as I spoke. Fear. Numbness. Then something that looked almost like resignation, like she had been expecting this exact conversation for months. She didn't cry this time. She just nodded and said, "I knew it." But Marcus did something unexpected. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers, and whispered something I couldn't hear. Whatever he said made her close her eyes and take a slow, shaky breath. The nurse handed me consent forms. Angela's hand trembled as she signed her name. That was when the first real shift happened. Small, almost invisible, but I caught it. One of the monitor numbers changed. Just slightly. The baby's heart rate variability improved by a few beats per minute. I didn't say anything yet. It was too soon to hope, but I wrote it down in my notes and kept watching. The maternity ward grows quiet after midnight. Families go home. Visitors stop arriving. Even the nurses lower their voices as they walk the halls. But for mothers lying in those beds, waiting for answers, sleep rarely comes. Angela was no exception. I checked on her at 11 o'clock, then again at 1 in the morning. Both times her eyes were open. She wasn't watching her phone or reading a book, or doing any of the things people do to pass time in a hospital room. She was just staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on her belly, listening to the monitor beep every time her baby boy's heart beat. Marcus had fallen asleep in the chair beside her bed sometime around 2. His head was tilted back, his mouth slightly open, but even in sleep, his hand was still holding hers. I noticed Angela would sometimes squeeze his fingers without looking at him. Just checking, I think, that he was still there. At 3 in the morning, I found her crying again. But this time it was different. Quieter. She wasn't sobbing or shaking. She was just lying there with tears running down her temples and into her hair, her lips moving silently. I stood in the doorway for a moment before she noticed me. When she did, she didn't wipe her face or pretend to be okay. She just looked at me with those exhausted, swollen eyes and said, "I've been praying." I sat down in the chair on the other side of her bed. "I haven't prayed in years," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. I stopped believing that anyone was listening. But tonight, I don't know what else to do. I can't control his heart rate. I can't fix whatever is wrong. I can't even make myself believe this will end well. So I'm just asking, even if no one is there. I didn't tell her that I had heard those same words from dozens of mothers before her. I didn't tell her that hospitals are filled with silent prayers. Whispered into pillows, breathed into empty rooms, cried into hands that won't stop shaking. I just sat with her while the monitor beeped and the night stretched on. And somewhere around 4 in the morning, something changed. The baby's heart rate pattern shifted. Just slightly, but enough for me to notice. Morning came like a slow, gray dawn filtering through the blinds. And with it came the medical team. I had called for a consult with the maternal fetal medicine specialist overnight. By 7 o'clock, 3 doctors stood around Angela's bed, reviewing the monitor strips from the past 12 hours. We spoke in low voices, using words we knew she could probably hear but couldn't fully understand. Cord dynamics, fetal reserve, intermittent decelerations. Angela lay perfectly still, her eyes moving between our faces, trying to read the truth before any of us spoke it. Marcus had woken up and now stood at the foot of the bed. His arms crossed so tightly across his chest that his knuckles had gone white. He wasn't looking at the doctors. He was looking at his wife. Finally, the specialist turned to Angela and explained what we were seeing. The baby's heart rate had improved slightly overnight, but there were still concerning patterns. Signs that the umbilical cord might be under intermittent compression. Signs that her baby boy wasn't getting as much oxygen as he should during rest periods. The recommendation was clear. Continue close monitoring. Prepare for the possibility of an emergency C-section if things worsened. And understand that delivery might need to happen within the next 24 to 48 hours. Angela didn't respond at first. She just blinked slowly, like she was processing words in a language she barely understood. Then she asked the question I had been dreading. Is my baby going to die? The room went silent. Even the monitor seemed to pause between beats. The specialist answered carefully, medically, honestly, without false promises. He explained the risks, the interventions available, the reasons for hope. But I watched Angela's face as he spoke, and I could see she wasn't hearing most of it. She had asked one question, and anything that wasn't a direct answer felt like avoidance. When he left the room, Angela turned to me. Her hand found mine on the bed rail. Tell me the truth, she whispered. Not the doctor truth. Yours. I took a breath, and I told her something I rarely say out loud. I told Angela that I had seen babies born under worse circumstances survive and thrive, and I had seen babies with better monitoring strips struggle. The truth was that no one could predict the next few hours with certainty. But I promised her this. We would not stop watching, and we would not hesitate if her baby boy needed to come out. She nodded, and for a moment, I thought she might finally rest. But then I noticed Marcus was no longer in the room. The nurse told me later that he had walked out without saying a word, just turned and disappeared down the hallway, his footsteps too fast, his shoulders too tight. No one followed him at first. Some silences need to be respected. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Angela started asking where he was. I could hear the panic creeping back into her voice. Not just fear for the baby anymore, but fear that her husband had reached his limit. That he had walked away because he couldn't carry this weight anymore. I found him in the hospital chapel. It's a small room on the second floor, tucked away behind the elevator bank. Not many people know it exists, but Marcus had found it. He was sitting in the last row of chairs, his head bowed, his hands clasped so tightly between his knees that his whole body was shaking. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat down next to him and waited. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked on the first word. I can't lose them, he said. I can't lose my son. I can't watch her go through that. I've been pretending to be strong for 3 days, and I don't have anything left. He looked up at me then, and I saw tears running down his face, tears he had been hiding from Angela for hours. I went out to call her mother this morning, he continued, and I couldn't even get the words out. I just stood in the parking lot and cried like a child. What kind of father does that? I told him the truth. A father who loves his family. That's who. He wiped his face with the back of his hand and stood up. I need to get back to her, he said. And he walked out of that chapel with his shoulders straighter than when he had walked in. But I saw his hands. They were still shaking. By early afternoon, the medical team had gathered again. The plan was nearly set. Prepare Angela for a possible C-section by evening if the monitoring didn't show clear improvement. The operating room was on standby. The NICU team had been notified. Angela had signed the consent forms with tears splashing onto the paper, blurring her own signature. Marcus stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder, his face a mask of forced calm. Then something happened that none of us expected. I was reviewing the latest monitor strip when a nurse touched my arm and pointed at the screen. The baby's heart rate variability had increased. Not just a little, significantly. And for the first time in nearly 24 hours, there were clear accelerations with his movements. I stared at the strip for a long time, not trusting what I was seeing. Sometimes monitors malfunction. Sometimes leads shift. Sometimes what looks like improvement is just a temporary fluctuation before everything crashes again. But this was different. I asked the nurse to reposition the sensors and run another 30 minutes of tracing. Then I stood beside Angela's bed and watched in silence as the lines continued to improve. The decelerations that had worried us earlier became less frequent. The baseline heart rate stabilized. Everything about the tracing looked better. Not perfect, but undeniably better. Angela must have seen something shift in my expression because she grabbed my wrist and asked, "What? What is it? Tell me." I didn't want to give her false hope. I had seen too many mothers soar on good news only to crash when things turned again. But I also couldn't lie to her. "Something is changing," I said carefully. "Your baby boy is showing us signs we didn't see before. I can't explain why yet, but the tracing looks better than it did this morning." Angela let out a sound. Half sob, half laugh, and pressed both hands against her belly. Marcus dropped his head and whispered something under his breath. I turned back to the monitor and kept watching. Somewhere in that hospital room, Hope had found a crack to slip through. The medical team met again, this time with a very different tone. We reviewed the monitor strips side by side, those from the previous night and those from the past few hours. The improvement wasn't just noticeable, it was measurable. The baby's heart rate patterns had shifted from concerning to borderline reassuring. But no one was ready to celebrate yet. I sat down with Angela and Marcus and explained where we stood. The emergency C-section was no longer imminent. We could wait. We could continue monitoring and give her baby boy more time inside, where he still needed to grow. But I was honest with them. This didn't mean the danger had passed completely. The cord compression could return. The heart rate patterns could change again. We would need to watch closely, perhaps for days or even weeks. Angela listened without interrupting. Her face was calmer than I had seen since she arrived, but her hands were still clasped tightly together in her lap. "What changed?" she asked me. "Why did he get better?" I shook my head slowly. "I wish I had a perfect answer for you. Sometimes babies reposition themselves. Sometimes whatever was pressing on the cord shifts. Sometimes." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Sometimes we don't fully understand why the body does what it does. But right now your son is fighting, and we're going to help him keep fighting." Marcus let out a long, shaky breath. Then he did something that made my heart ache. He knelt down beside Angela's bed, pressed his face against her belly, and spoke directly to the baby. "Keep going," he whispered. "We're right here. We're not going anywhere." Angela ran her fingers through his hair, and for the first time since she had walked through those hospital doors, I saw her smile. It was small. It was fragile. It could have shattered at the next bad news. But it was there. I left them alone for a while. Some moments are not for doctors. Some moments are only for families holding on to each other. Angela remained in the hospital for another full week. 7 days of monitors, blood tests, ultrasounds, and waiting. 7 nights of lying awake while the machines beeped and the nurses checked in every few hours. 7 mornings of waking up not knowing whether this would be the day everything changed again. I watched her transform during that week. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic movie moment way. Slowly. Quietly. The way real strength always grows. On the 2nd day, she stopped crying every time I walked into the room. On the 3rd day, she ate a full meal without someone reminding her. On the 4th day, I found her laughing at something Marcus said. A real laugh, the kind that comes from somewhere genuine. But I also saw the fear still living underneath. The way her hand would fly to her belly every time the monitor beeped differently. The way her breathing would change during ultrasounds, becoming shallow and quick until she saw that heartbeat. The way she would look at me sometimes with those eyes that asked the same question over and over without words. Is he really going to be okay? Marcus broke down on the 5th night. Angela told me about it the next morning. She said he had woken up around 2 in the morning, gasping, drenched in sweat. He had dreamed that he held their son cold and still, and woke up reaching for something that wasn't there. They had held each other in the dark hospital room, both of them shaking, both of them whispering things they hadn't said out loud before. He told her he had already started imagining what he would say at a funeral. She told him she had picked out a name months ago, but had been too afraid to say it because she thought that would make the loss hurt more. They said the name together for the first time that night. I didn't ask what it was. That wasn't my moment to share. But I noticed something after that night. Angela held her belly differently. Not like she was protecting something she might lose. Like she was introducing herself to someone who was already here. At 37 weeks and 2 days, Angela went into labor naturally. No induction. No emergency C-section. No dramatic race to the operating room. Just the slow, steady rhythm of contractions building through the early morning hours, the way labor is supposed to begin. I was called at 4:30 in the morning. By the time I arrived, Angela was already in the delivery room, surrounded by nurses, her face flushed and sweaty, her breathing controlled and focused. Marcus stood beside her, holding a cold washcloth to her forehead, speaking to her in a voice so low I couldn't hear the words. The NICU team had been notified, a precaution, given everything that had happened. They stood ready in the corner, their equipment warmed and waiting. But as Angela pushed and the baby's heart rate stayed strong on the monitor, I watched them slowly relax. This was not the delivery anyone had prepared for. This was something else entirely. Angela screamed when it was time. Not from fear this time, from effort. From the primal, overwhelming work of bringing a new life into the world. Marcus cried openly beside her, tears streaming down his face as he counted through each contraction. And then at 9:07 in the morning, her baby boy cried for the first time. That sound, that sharp, furious, beautiful cry, filled every corner of the room. The nurses smiled. The NICU team stepped back. And I placed that warm, wiggling, perfect baby onto Angela's chest before she could even ask. She grabbed him with both arms and pulled him against her body like she had been waiting her entire life for this single moment. Marcus buried his face in her hair and sobbed. I stepped back and let them have it. The first cries. The first touches. The first time a mother who had spent months preparing for loss finally allowed herself to believe that she got to keep him. He was small. Just over 5 pounds. But his lungs were strong, his color was good, and his eyes were already open, looking up at his mother like he had been waiting to meet her too. I came back to check on Angela a few hours after the delivery. The room was quieter now, softer somehow. The bright delivery lights had been dimmed. The chaos of monitors and medical staff had faded away. What remained was just a family, new, exhausted, and overflowing with something too big for words. Angela was sitting up in bed, her baby boy cradled against her chest, wrapped in a white hospital blanket with tiny blue stripes. Marcus sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders, his chin resting on top of her head. They were both looking down at that small face like they were memorizing every detail. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching, and I thought about the woman who had walked into this hospital less than 2 weeks ago, crying before she even reached the front desk, convinced she would leave empty-handed. That woman seemed like a stranger now. Angela looked up when she noticed me. Her eyes were red and puffy again, but these tears were different. These were the tears that come after the storm, when the sun finally breaks through, and you realize you survived something you never thought you would. I remember walking in here, she said softly, her voice still hoarse from labor. I remember thinking I was saying goodbye, before I even knew for sure. She looked down at her son, and her face crumbled in the most beautiful way. And now he's here. He's really here. Marcus kissed her temple and whispered something that made her laugh through her tears. I walked over and checked the baby, his temperature, his color, his breathing. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. The same baby who had shown us concerning heart rate patterns, who had made us prepare for emergency delivery, who had kept everyone holding their breath for days on end. He opened his eyes while I was examining him. Dark blue, the way newborn eyes often are. And for just a moment he looked right at me. I smiled down at him. Welcome to the world, little one, I said quietly. Your mother has been waiting for you. Angela reached for my hand and squeezed it. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on us. I squeezed back. You never gave up on him. I just helped you wait. Some stories deserve to be remembered. And some mothers deserve to know that the fear they carried was never a sign of weakness. It was proof of how much they already loved.